grief and then us laughing, it's not
Of
too
It's all
course,
your fault.
there's no
It's
trick.
all your fault.
We are
serious.
from Long Island, New York, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very much for tuning into another episode of Love, Death, and Taxes. Today, we're going to be talking about navigating complex grief, loving and letting go. And that's about someone who you may have had mixed feelings for. Like you love them, but you also could leave them. And so our special guest today is Erin Delfino from the blog, she just changed the name, Full of Grace and Grief, instead, where it used to be, sorry, Erin, it used to be called Being Griefful. And so let's get started and we'll be right back. Hi again, ladies and gents. I'm Ryan O'Neill Williams, and my co-host, who's like all on the other side over there in the glasses, is Agnes Amisano. And of course, our special guest today is blogger Erin Delfino. Both of you guys are, I was watching this show yesterday, and they were like, "How dare you call women guys?" It was very. I know, in a way, it's just something we've allowed. But both you ladies are grief counselors in a grief counselor group, and I think this is a great topic for us to take on in the new year. Moving forward, there has been a lot of grieving over the last year. I mean, there's been wars, several wars, and several, terrorist acts and death. It's really hard to get away from over this last year. And separate and apart from that, I guess we're going to go directly into, what it's like to have someone who was with you but is no longer with us. And now, we definitely have to grieve with them. Why would we consider this to be complex, Agnes?
Well, this is why I wanted to, because I experienced myself those feelings.
Okay.
You know the person well enough, and you have mixed feelings about them. Either it could be a good friend or part of the family, and you don't always feel the love, as you might say. And then you go into the funeral, and I know maybe I'm too realist, but when you go into the funeral or you're talking to some people, and of course, if you would just listen to the people that they lost the loved ones, only the best people are passing. Only the best, the loving people. Like hell doesn't want, all the other people. Only the angels are passing, but then that's beside the point, which is normal. I might be too raw talking about it, but then you're sitting and you're listening to those stories. That person was the best, or that person, when you know other things about that person, and then it's like,
There's a saying that you only become a saint after you pass.
yeah,
And
very
everybody remembers only the good stuff, right? And I think it's part of our protecting our hearts, from the pain of, and you don't want to go there necessarily, because it's part of the guilt and part of the even the anger, like trying to understand, especially if it's a sudden death, because you have all this unspoken, unfelt emotion. Where's it going to go? But everybody becomes a saint after they pass.
yes.
And it can be frustrating because you want to yell at people and be like, well, they did this, and this, or, but you can't forget that other side.
Yeah, but I guess that's the anger that the griever is holding in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what comes out, that it, your social graces, that you're supposed to stand up and listen. I'm going to tell you the truth about this person. He or she were not saying that. What are you talking about? It's like sometimes you feel like saying that, but then dealing with the anger, I went through years ago through anger during grief, but that was for one reason. It was extremely raw emotions, to the point of cursing and getting really upset. How could you? You should have told me, and then things like that. And I had to come to peace with myself first, and then with the people that they pass. Otherwise, I would not be sitting here today. I think I'll be in a mental institution still, dealing with my emotions, with the anger, resentment, and everything else. So, like, really comes to one of the five um, grieving stages.
Right.
The anger, that anger came. They don't have to come in certain. Um, this you feel first. This one you feel. Anger can just take over your life, and if you
Yes.
allow that, and if you allow that to happen, you are done.
And you won't heal.
Yeah.
You won't be able to process any of the emotions, good and bad. And it's bargaining,
Yeah.
right? Why do the good people go, and some of those people who are criminals or perform criminal activities, they're around still. And that's the bargaining. I should be there and they should be here, and um, that comes into play. I mean, all grief is complex, all grief is difficult, but there are certain situations and certain things about people's lives that come to the surface, so to speak, when they do pass.
Yeah.
And if you leave a lot of things unsaid, there is more proneness to those things coming out.
Yeah. Yeah. At some point, like erupting, because it's sitting there simmering under, and then it comes out, right? Um, wow. I'm trying to personalize this and not get in trouble, okay? Uh, my father, when he passed away, we were estranged for many, many, many years. In fact, he had moved on to another family and basically never really looked back. He just, moved on. And I'm not even blaming him. It's so weird because he's dead. So I'm doing exactly what we always do, right? We're gonna give him a little extra. So I'm not blaming him per se, because it's quite possible that if and when he did try, he was rebuffed, or But the truth is, later in my life, when I became a man, when I was married, when I was, what I mean, and it turns out members of his second family reached out to me. And when they did so, now all of a sudden I had two sisters and a brother that I had never had before. And I was very happy about that. And within maybe a year of connecting with them, going to my sister's wedding, hanging out with them, even starting a business with one of my half brother. He passed away, and it was under some circumstances that, to this day, are a little fishy. So in my head, I've always thought about talking to him and telling him how I feel, and just trying to figure out who he was, because everybody says, "Oh my gosh, Ryan, you look exactly like him." All the time. I used to get that all the time. I would walk into a room and they're like, "Roy?" And they think I was him. And so I wanted to know who this person was, because I grew separate and apart and became my own person. But I'd still like to know, where I came from. So I was angry. I know I was angry because that had never happened. And because on the circumstances in which he died, it was clear that he was either getting into trouble or someone got him into trouble, right? So then you're thinking all these mixed feelings about who is this person, and am I angry? But also I felt like I had been robbed of an experience. Months before, apparently he had spoken to one of my sisters and said, I want to talk to Ryan. And it just hadn't happened. Like the opportunity hadn't presented itself, that kind of thing. And, you know, I was upset. But eventually I let that go. I hope my ears aren't burning. My ears feel like they're burning. This is not, this is very personal. But at the same time, so it was complex. It was weird for a while, but then I was like, if he had wanted to, he would have reached out. If I had wanted to, I would have made a greater effort to find him, right? I grew up without him. I did fine. I'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Yeah, but there's still that could have, should
Yes.
have.
Yeah,
What,
but
that sometimes comes back, and I was very surprised with the need of forgiving myself for being angry, forgiving myself for being bitter, forgiving myself for screaming and yelling at people that they are no longer here to answer, forgiving myself for lack of courage when there was time to ask and I haven't asked. So there was a lot of forgiveness, and surprisingly not towards the people that they're gone. It was forgiving myself first. Then I achieved this peace between my heart, and then I was like, okay, it was a hell of a ride, but I got there. Now it's time to understand them, why they did that. And then it took me a little time to understand why people made those decisions, why they did it still, they didn't make it right. It didn't make it right.
no.
And then I went through the stage of, well, if that would have been different, where I would be, how my life would that affect me in what degree? And start, you start weighing what and how and where and all, and it's like, okay, I have to stop driving myself crazy. Be thankful for what you have. Be thankful for where you are. That was I simply accepted that, and acceptance part of the grief process. So, anger, depression, acceptance. I think that was my grief process. And only when I start going through training, I'm thinking like, oh, so I wasn't going mad. That's the way it's supposed to go. It's supposed to feel those things. Yes. So everything start making sense then. But it was so difficult. And it's also even worse when, how I start talking at the beginning of the program, when people that you don't really biggest fan of, they passing in, and it's like, okay, are you sure you're talking about the right person?
Yeah.
You have to give them a shot, and then you have to again go through this again. Forgive yourself. Forgive them.
Exactly. That was kind of weird for me because in my mind, I was like, maybe the person I had heard about in this particular instance, so I'm talking about my father, maybe the person I had heard about really was a different person once he was with the other family, because I heard some things. I was like, oh, really? Was he this person or was he? And then there were a lot of I have older cousins, like 20 years older than me, and they knew him before the divorce. In fact, he was apparently very good to them. But I only heard that stuff after he passed away. Like nobody said anything during the time. And so it's very interesting that, people seem to focus in on the good stuff because, they're doing that. I guess they're trying to help you too. They're trying to say this is who that person was, and try to think of them in that way so you can move on from it and just have some great feelings. Now, guilt and forgiveness feelings that you were talking about, Agnes or Erin, how do we get rid of those? Is there a process? What do we do?
Well, just like with anything, I don't think there's a step-by-step process necessarily. You don't go to, you don't complete step 1 and go to step 2. Sometimes it's repeated steps. Right. Like you touched upon, unfortunately, time does does heal. And sometimes that comes quick, and sometimes it's longer. All depends how much work we put into it, and maybe that is going to a grief support group, talking to others, finding out what you're feeling with, maybe talking to a therapist, figuring out what is going on, understanding that all relationships are different, right? So my relationship with that person might be completely different from yours, and you might have anger, and I might not. But each individual is different. But I think it's just time, but it's definitely reaching out to others, talking to other people who are grieving, understanding what you're feeling, because
Yeah.
when you understand, then you can do something about it.
Well, otherwise, what's going to happen to that person? You become constantly, there are emotions, thoughts, and behaviors with anger, because if you stay that way, so if you're angry, so the resentment and the feeling of impatient and rage, that will affect not only the feelings towards that particular person, that will subsequently go towards everybody around. So the family members, the people the closest, you start kind of getting rid of those feelings on them, and they will feel the impact of the anger. um I'm faced with a person who is grieving for the last 4 years, and I was in the preparation for this show. I look up certain things, and like even behavior as of stop taking care of personal hygiene. It's one of the things that can impact you when you are angry and resentful and bitter, and you stop taking care of yourself, so because you don't care, and that affects not only the closest people to you, but everyone, because they can
Mm.
literally smell you mile away, and it's
Part of
you're
the
laughing,
depression.
but it's
Yeah, you're wrong. You're wrong. But I can see that
yeah.
self care would fall off. I mean, anger in and of itself is a damaging thing to yourself, right? They say that if your anger is kind of like holding a hot coal in your own hand, holding on to it, because you're basically only harming yourself. Nobody else is really going to be harmed by it. You kind of have to, at some point, either resolve it or let it go. So I see what you mean. I mean, in a way, it's all, combusting within yourself, and then yeah, you decide you're not going to take care of yourself because you're angry. You decide you're focused in on, whatever these thoughts are, and or doing things in order to deal with those thoughts that might keep you on a sort of an obsessive, maybe even compulsive set of behaviors. Are those if it gets to that point, should someone like seek professional help? Is there some sort of group? Well, I know you guys are in a group, but are there other things that you should do if you realize, oh my gosh, it's been 6 months, it's been 4 years, and I'm still angry and upset about this person? It's clearly disrupting my life. What do we do at that point?
I mean, I think you have to seek some sort of mental health assistance, whether that's seeing a therapist, whether it's going to a support group, or maybe if you start just talking to your family if you're that close. Maybe you're not close and you have to seek outside help. Because what could even happen, and in many cases it does, if people don't deal with the emotions now and it happens again, it's opening the scar even wider. We put a band-aid on it, and then, months or years later, if something else happens, it kind of resurfaces and it's even harder. But definitely, like you touched upon, self-care is absolutely number one. And that's okay to seek mental health. There's, if you want to do it anonymously, and even call a helpline to just ask for support, it's so important. And we need to make it acceptable.
Yeah, we're touching when it comes to the mental health, which is it's still not on the level that it used to be, but it's a kind of a shameful
Yes.
feeling and a little taboo, like, oh, because someone has problem with the depression. right now there's more people that they have feelings of depression than they don't.
Yes.
But when you leave it alone, and God knows, I know this person, and it's like it's horrendous, because you know who I'm talking about. But it comes to the point that this person feels comfortable, that that's who they become. Like, okay, I used to be this and this person that actually people could talk to a certain extent, but now it's like, okay, I became this bitter person, that I'm very depressed, very negative, um very negative.
Right, right. I
And
think what you're talking about is when you have a problem and then it becomes like a mood, and then you keep on doing it until it becomes a part of your personality, right?
yes, yes. And that person feels like, okay, that's who I am now. And it's so difficult to deal day on day to day, like with anything, including saying hello. What a beautiful day. What are you talking about? And it's like, it comes to that point. And the problem is that also although you're being advised, let's say, that family member can commit that person because they are suicidal in their thoughts, they're going to be held for 48 hours and they're going to
Yes.
be released. Where is the help? Where is the help?
So how can we support someone if we know someone like that? I mean, you're saying, yeah, okay, I'm recognizing this is a very interesting question, because you actually do know someone who's similar like this. What do we do? How should we actually handle a person who is having this on a how can we help them, even though we may not necessarily there's there are books that basically say you should run as far as you can from this type of person, right? I've seen that somewhere. What should we do if we are dealing with a person who has fallen into this
Despair.
abyss?
Yeah,
Yeah,
bits of despair. I don't know. I have noticed that
Yeah.
talking a little bit helps, but
Yeah.
at a certain point I feel like I'm
It's
out of
going nowhere.
words.
It's not easy. I think one is to just encourage them to, that, you're there for them. You're there to listen. You're there to comfort them. And if they're turned off by it, I mean, I think we have a responsibility, almost just because we care about them, to offer them mental health assistance. Obviously, if they're harming themselves or harming somebody else, then that might need other resources beyond that, because you don't want them to hurt somebody else nor themselves. Um, and then it's really up to them whether or not they want to take the help. But I hope
yeah,
that they would find somebody that they love and care about and listen. Maybe it is calling somebody for, to put them in to an institution for 24 or 48 hours, and maybe they get the help. We don't know, but we have to offer it. And hopefully we don't come across those people too often, hopefully, because it's not never easy.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Grief is not an easy feeling. Grief can be very judgmental, or by others. I keep repeating the same thing when I
People could
was.
rush you,
Yeah,
oh, you should be
yeah.
over it by now.
That's what I've been told. Yes.
Yeah.
Get over it. You have to start, because other people are uncomfortable. That's
Mhm.
another thing that as a society, we are not exactly prepared to deal with.
as a man, I'm not supposed to have any feelings about it at all. I'm supposed to just move right on. Don't worry about it. You're good. Keep going. One guy told me, it wasn't that bad, right? Just keep it moving. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
And just compassion,
People are
just
like that, man.
compassionate, like, and maybe because I've had my grief, of course, and as well as you both, where we understand a little bit more. So maybe we're a little bit more compassionate, but just in general, I think just people need to be nicer in general, kinder. But
That would have been nice. Yes, that would have been
yeah,
nice.
I
Just have
think
understanding. But as you see, as you said it before, like we went through
Mhm.
this, others didn't.
yes,
Usually, what's unknown, it's scary.
yes,
So
Yeah.
instead putting a little bit of time and energy to understand others, why they are the way they
Mhm.
are, or maybe because where they're coming from, maybe the cultural differences, they are dealing with things other ways. People are tend to jump into judgment and create their opinion based on their wrong judgment.
Yeah.
And then we having, okay, I dealt with that. That's it. I'm putting cross on that person. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to
Mhm.
understand them. So it would have been a lot. We would have been better as a society if we can put a little bit more understanding into others people feelings, because you know in business world, the first thing is the look.
Yep.
Your looks, it's your business card. When I was a lot younger and single, my girlfriend and I, we met this guy. My God, he was a beautiful young guy, 20 years old. We were in our 20s. As soon as he opened his mouth, the charm just disappeared, because it's just he had nothing to offer. So looks are very misleading. Look a little bit deeper. Look a little bit
Yeah.
deeper. Not everything that shine is a piece of gold, you know.
Right. Don't
So
just say
From
everything.
Shakespeare over there. Okay, okay. Shakespeare.
I told
All,
you doing this
all that glitters, right? Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, Erin was saying,
hey
Oh,
Ryan,
I'm sorry.
saying your platform here of talking about love, death, and taxes, it opens up the gates to talk about grief openly. The more you make it acceptable and comfortable to talk about, then maybe others feel more comfortable as well. So commend you both for
Yes.
opening this avenue, because that's what I think.
Agnes and I, Agnes and I had to find ways of talking to one another about crazy stuff. That this is technically our therapy, okay, that we do every Friday.
yeah,
But hopefully, it opens other gates to other people that could, hear it
I
as well.
would hope, I would hope so. Ladies and gentlemen who are seeing this maybe for the first time, maybe you're hearing us for the first time on the podcast, maybe you're hearing us, seeing us for the first time on LinkedIn. But I am hoping that, yes, you can understand that we do cover these three topics: love, death, and yes, money as in taxes. So it is an interesting part of the year for that. I do want to, before we go on and talk about this, because I actually want to ask you guys about acknowledging the difficulty that you had with this person in the relationship. But I do want to talk about the fact that Erin has renamed her blog that we enjoy so much to "Full of Grace and Grief" instead of what was it before? I don't think anything was wrong with it before. It being griefful. Oh, so you know what? That does seem like an improvement, yeah, Erin. It looks like you've moved on a little bit. Is that what that is?
Like you said, part of the growth. It started coming to me. I was thinking about things, where I wanted to go with it, and I guess October I put some feelers out there to my readers, and we kind of agreed on this title, and I think it just speaks to more of my faith, because my faith is important to me. So I put the grace in there. And then, of course, I am still grieving, and I will always be grieving. So the grief part. So, yeah, so full of grace and grief. So here's to a new year and more readers, hopefully.
absolutely. You are a wonderful
I
writer.
like it. I like grace and grief.
Yes, it's very.
Oh,
And again, it really
yeah.
show progress with
Mhm.
you as well.
Exactly. But you have to put in the time, right? So
Yeah,
you're only going to get what you give, right? So, you got to put in the work too. There's no easy solution. That you can't just go to Target or Walmart and buy like a book that says, grief. You got to read it, you got to absorb it, and you got to talk to others about it. And whatever platform that is, maybe it is through journaling, maybe it is through music, maybe, or some other art form, painting or artwork of some type, something that's going to to let those emotions come out, because if you stifle them, that it's not going to heal you, and it's going to probably have some health, aspects, whether it's mentally, physically, because some people also encounter that physically, ailments, aches and pains, because they're not dealing with what's going on with their bodies.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no question.
All those feelings can really, feelings of depression, feelings of anger can really pull you down, and you become completely different person, not a person not inviting person, not inviting to others to talk to you, to pay attention to it. Because when you are grumpy, when you're angry, when you're full of rage or impatient, those type of people usually will push everyone away, and it's difficult to you really have to have a person that cares for you, to try to keep knocking that wall down, and keep coming back and say, listen, I think you need help, I think you need help. And the first step is to make them actually realize that help is needed. That's the first big step.
Yeah.
And then when if they come to bereavement groups, then they will realize that what they feel, it's normal, that there is nothing wrong with
Right.
them.
There
And
are
that,
other people who are
yes,
going through the same exact thing. You're not alone in this. Your thoughts aren't alone. And you have maybe tips and resources that we give, to handle those emotions. Once you know the emotion, then maybe you can tackle it differently, because you know what it's about. When that comes about, you know what feeling that is.
yeah.
Well,
So
we
it's
literally have to say, how does it make you feel, right? What is it? So I guess that's what the next, I guess I'm going to toss out there is, when you're going through this whole love-hate dynamic, you're thinking about it, like, how do you process that? Are you bringing up the complication? Are you able to split this aside? A lot of people try to do this, but everything's almost always intertwined. Like, these are the bad things and these are the positives. Is that probably part of the process?
Well, I guess picking the good things, that see, coming back to the beginning of what we're saying, picking the good things to remember about the person, it kind of helps to move on. We cannot attach ourselves, in my eyes, to all aspects of life of that particular loved one that we lost, because we didn't influence every area of their life. We were not able to influence them, or we didn't cause them to act certain way. And while I'm talking, I'm kind of hearing myself, like, for the very first time, and getting help with my own issues. It's like, okay, I didn't cause this, so let it go, let it go. So, see, it's good to talk.
Right.
It just
It's
shows
good.
you it's very good to talk to. It's very difficult to open up for a lot of, like, I have a big mouth, I will talk and talk and talk, but it's very difficult for a lot of people to open up, because they're afraid of judgment. And being in a surroundings where everyone is going through the same thing, it's very helpful, because they will give you the best understanding that somebody else cannot give you. So yes, just realizing, maybe analyzing, it has to be time and energy put in, but analyzing somebody's life and attaching yourself to one part and detaching from another, maybe they will give you some understanding why that person was like this and not other ways, and forgiving yourself for misunderstanding themselves, or forgiving them for being the way they were with you. Maybe that will help. I found comfort in that way.
Okay.
And forgiveness is,
Yes.
just and it's hard to get. And I think you just got to be patient with ourselves. We got to be honest. We got to be patient. Those two go hand in hand.
Where will we go without peace between us? We'll be scratching our eyes out to everybody.
Yeah,
not being nice people.
Forgiving ourselves because obviously once they've passed, we can't change the fact of whatever happened.
Yeah.
That
Right.
has stuck, clearly. um, but forgiveness for ourselves to allow ourselves to heal and to let that go, and that's a process, and it might not be the easiest, but hopefully, and those people who are faithful like myself, whatever faith you do have, hopefully you can turn to that, and maybe that gives you some strength and peace to figure what you're dealing with out.
Yeah, especially at the beginning, we see a lot of
course.
people that they are angry with God
It's
themselves.
raw. Yeah,
Yes.
it's very raw. It's not fair sometimes, especially
Yeah.
when it's sudden.
Yeah.
Even if it was a sickness, it's still anger with God, because love is, grief is love with no place to go, right?
Yes.
That's what we say all the
Yes.
time. And it's true. So there's a lot of anger. You got this emotion, and what do you do with it now? So, there's a lot of anger at God, or, whatever higher being you believe in, because how could they do this? And that takes time.
Yeah.
That's the tough part. I hope most people do not look and say, "Oh, this person or this thing that we live in," because there are some people who think we live in a construct, or where we have the universe that is moving through things. Things are happening for a reason that you don't understand. I hope you're not looking at it as that, as opposed to the thing that I have learned, dealing with death over the years and losing both my parents and other people who were close to me, even as young as I must have been 11 or 12 when one of my roommates was killed when I was a kid. I feel like the most important thing should be to, right here in this moment, remember that you don't always have a tunnel of time. We always think that, like, we're here and we're just like, oh, I've got all the time in the world, I don't have to. You will be less upset with yourself if you take advantage of as many times as you possibly can to reach out to all these people. If you did everything that you could do, then you don't have to worry about that anymore, right? If you actually provided fellowship or reached out and people swatted your hand away, well, you're kind of absolved of whatever. You understand they're going through something, and whatever, you can only do so much. But I feel as though the one thing I learned over the last few years is you think you have time, but you don't. And you kind of have to make the best of the world as it is when it's here. And then you won't be so upset with yourself or whatever, because you would have done the things that you needed to do. What happens if you knew in a week from now you were out of here, or someone else who you love was out of here? What was the last thing you said to them? What would be the last thing you'd say to them?
Well, actually, I've been in a situation like that. I was the one who had to tell my mother that she had 2 weeks to live. And that was extremely scary because I was afraid of her reaction. I didn't know how I'm going to handle her reaction. And she was so graceful. It was surprising to me. It's not like she was always calm person, but finding out I have 2 weeks to live, it's, so her calmness and her regret what she wanted to do in her lifestyle, and she realized that she no longer has time for that, and she was not in any shape or form to do anything to go and still do in the next 2 weeks. So that changed my life. That changed my life forever. I think I became a better person, more understanding, and suddenly things that they were important to me, they no longer had any importance, because I realized that I'm wasting my time,
Wait.
stupid things as, oh my God, on this picture it didn't look nice. I have to redo that picture and all that. Those things like looks wise or materialistic things went out the window.
Yeah. Right
Sadly,
up there.
sadly realizing what's really important in life.
The value
Exactly.
becomes
Yes,
That's
so
all.
different.
absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
amazing.
So,
Yep.
but before we end, we're coming 20 minutes now. Um, Today, I was advising on one situation, which exactly falls into exactly what we were talking about, podcast, love, death, and taxes. Just
Mhm.
imagine a young married couple. Um, they're not even 30 years old, with four beautiful children between 6 months to 5 years old.
Mhm.
You have beautiful love situation. He dies of a heart attack at 29 and leaves her with extremely large tax bill.
Mm.
Are you telling me this happened recently? Is that
Yes,
what you're telling me?
yes. So
Oh man. See, you
everything
never know, man.
everything intertwined. Love, death, and taxes, part of life, more often
Yeah.
we link together than we think.
Yeah, it's scary. And regardless, I mean, you kind of have to try to put your affairs in order, regardless, especially when you know you have children, right? Because that makes it even more, more of a burden upon the person who you're leaving alone.
So
But
at
oh my
29,
gosh,
you
that's
kind
rough.
of feel you have all the time in the
Mhm.
world,
Exactly. That's the thing. Like you never think you're going to pass away, but the truth is, at any point in time, see, I
Again,
don't know. Maybe it's my upbringing, but I always thought I could get hit with a lightning bolt at any point in time. I was always thinking like that. But okay, so some people not. But yeah, go ahead, Erin. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. We've all had those experiences of death. I know myself, I'm a young widow, I'm not even 50 yet, and I lost my husband. And it was sudden. But we learn from this. And when we create these platforms where we're open about it, making it more comfortable and hopefully giving people tips on how to do things better. We all know, like, maybe check your taxes, maybe check your life insurance, maybe do these things, even though you don't think they're important now. We can only be the platform for these people. Um,
Yeah.
and
Always
that's
think
like our role now as grievers,
Yeah.
is to pass it forward.
Yeah, you
Absolutely.
always think you've got the time, but so often. Agnes, you just messed my head up, man. That's not cool at all. I did not like that. Oh, wow. I
I
feel
know.
that,
I
you
know.
know. And I think part of, listen, as we were talking, you're like, oh, it's great that you put on this platform and blah, blah, blah. I think this is almost, if we weren't doing it this way, we would have to find some other way. I think we are those people. We are, what do they call us? Yeah, I feel as though I might be a person who's constantly feeling other people's feelings. And so when you tell me something like that, I mean, I start feeling for this young woman who has to now deal with that situation. It's so funny that you said that about your mother, Agnes. When my mother passed away, my mother and I are 30 years apart, to 30 years and 4 days apart.
Mhm.
She's like September 23, and I'm the 27th. And when she passed away at 73, it only took a couple of days for me to realize. I was like, oh, I possibly might only have 30 years left on this planet. And that's not, my thing now is I'm living to 100. But at the time, I was like, oh, the women in our family generally live longer than the men. And what if that is all the time I had? And you're right. It completely changes the way you think and what you do with yourself. Everything got turned on its head within weeks. And yeah, there were other things that were happening, but I became a different person after she passed away, because I was like, oh my gosh, what if I'm wasting the last 30 years of my life? I already passed the midpoint. What the heck? And so I think people should definitely think about that. You never know. You never know. You only have so much time, man. And that sounds really negative sometimes, but at the same time. It's truthful, right? That sounds like truth, right? Am I just goofing off? Okay.
No, this is not. Look, I outlived my father and my two brothers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really, you think about life, you think about the time, but personally myself, it helped me appreciate every day that I have, appreciate what I have. Like I said, a lot less. Uh, I have what I have because I need it, not because um material things have no value to me. Even if someone will give me shoes that, see, I don't even know the name of the red bottom and all that. I don't even know that name. My husband offered to buy one year for me. I was like, don't you dare. They're just shoes. I spent $25 for a pair of shoes and that's it, because they just simply, they don't have value. This is an item that you're using that doesn't have value. Expenses as a, like a couple $1,000s for purses. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine doing that, because that's no value.
Yeah.
Family. That's
Experiences are so much more important than that.
Yeah.
Being present instead of giving presents, right? It's like a very different, I feel like that's very different. And I say that to my kids all the time, who really don't care because they're still at the age where, Dad, we want presents. but
they
I
have
think
to enjoy the childhood. So
I think, yes, of course, they have to enjoy their childhood, but I still want them to understand, listen, like I said, I was explaining before, my dad was not around for most of the stuff that I'm doing. You know what I mean? So it's like, you really have no idea. Although I think I might enjoy their company more than they enjoy mine.
Yeah.
Whatever. We were playing Jenga and Connect Four the other night, and I was having a really good time. And Lily was too. But then Kingston was like, Dad, I'm going back to my computer, them and that stuff. But yeah, so great to see you again, Erin. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see an understanding or read some very thoughtful, metaphorical, and helpful information about grief and or grieving, I want you to take a look at Erin's blog at fullofgraceandgrief.substack.com. It's on the screen. Erin, anything recent you want to tell us something about? Recent?
No, I will just say that I did share one post this year so far, all about resolutions, focusing on the soul of it. Okay. And so this year I'm just embracing the thought of, are things harmful or helpful for me? And so maybe some people would take that to ask themselves that in anything that we're doing, is it harmful or helpful to us? And then just acting on those things. I think obviously helpful would be the progressive way to go with things, and maybe just to take that time out, because, mental health is very, very important, something personal to me. So yeah, making people aware that they are enough.
Very, very much.
For your time today. Appreciate it. Now we are grateful that you had time for us.
Right.
We really
thank you. Yes, we were looking forward. To you coming back. Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ryder Neal Williams, and I'm co-hosting here with Agnes Amisano and our special guest today, Erin Delfino. Thank you guys so much for listening. As you know, this show is brought to you by nytaxresolutions.com. Agnes the Tax Pro. I hope you are looking out for that this year. I believe tax season begins on the 29th. If you are running a business and not paying attention to your actual taxes, this is the time you're going to gather everything and do it. I mean, number one, listen, it's like beating a dead horse. That's a horrible metaphor, isn't it? It's like beating a dead horse over here. Yes. The number one thing that she says over and over and over again is file. please just file. So here it is. If you're checking out, if you need some help doing that, check out nytaxresolutions.com. I'm Brian Neal Williams. Thank you guys so much. You want to sign off, Agnes?
Absolutely. Yes, keep up. Just gather all your receipts. Make sure you have everything, even if you have to file. You're doing more harm to yourself if you are thinking that Uncle Sam forgets about you. That not happen. Does not happen. So, please, if you need any help, reach out. I'm here to help. And if you need any help with um, actually enriching your company and making sure that others know about you, reach out to Ryan. He will put you on the map and will help you with your business. So good night until
Thank you.
next
Thank
week.
you. All right, great, excellent. Oh, speaking of which, I think, Agnes, there are some new rules around creating an LLC, a business, and I think I'd like to talk about that, even if it's not necessarily the topic that we have next week. I think we'll definitely get into that, ladies and gentlemen. There are some major changes in the law, especially it's definitely here in New York, but I think it's also federal. If you have an LLC, you are expected to report in new ways, and it literally you can be fined $500 a day for not doing so. So we'll talk about that next week for
Absolutely.
sure.
Let's
Ladies
do
and
that.
gentlemen, thank you so much. I love